Hey everybody. Before we get into the lecture of this week's lesson, I thought it'd be interesting to give you a fun example of textual criticism in the real world in a non-biblical setting. First, we need to review the premises and assumptions of text criticism. Now, this is all from last week. This is not part of any assignment. This is just kind of enrichment. So if you don't have time for this kind of thing, go ahead and skip it. I just found a fun example and thought I'd share it with you. So here we go. First, text criticism assumes that there is an original form of the document out there. Now, we might not have unearthed the original form of that document yet. For example, we do not have the first copy of Matthew or Mark or Luke or John. We just have copies of copies of copies. So, we have to assume that there is a first version out there somewhere. We also assume that the language and writing style and sentence structure of a document tell about the age and the origin of the document. So if we go out to Egypt and we dig up something in the sand that's written in Greek, we know that it's probably not as ancient as something we could dig up in the same sand written in, say, Aramaic or even ancient Egyptian. Because versions of Greek changed over the centuries, and so we can tell how old something is by the writing style of it. And finally, we assume that mistakes in copying can be made both intentionally and unintentionally. This is very, 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 very important when it comes to biblical studies. If you want a great example of this, just Google the Devil's Bible, where the copyists in a 16th century printing of the Old Testament messed up on the printing of the Ten Commandments, so that they actually said, "Thou shalt commit adultery." It's brilliant. So anyway, those are the assumptions of text criticism. Now, here's the fun example that I wanted to tell you about. In the 1934 edition of Webster's New International Dictionary, there was a curious little word in the D's that showed up called the Dord. Nobody knew what in the world a Dord is, but nobody really cared for about 10 years. Here's what happened. So, what you see there is a screenshot. It's a picture of a copy of the dictionary that I have, and it comes from just a dictionary page. Notice it says Dord in bold there, then it's got a pronunciation, then it says it's a noun, and it says it references physics and chemistry, and it means density. Well, it turns out when the copiers were originally sent this information, they were sent what I've got there in quotes, capital D period, space, then the word or, space, lowercase d period. What that means is, in physics or chemistry, if you see a capital D or a lowercase d, that usually means the density of an object. Well, the copy editor didn't know that. He wasn't a chemistry nerd or a physics nerd. So he just thought, oh, well, that spells D-O-R-D, Dord. It must mean density in chemistry or physics. So he put in there Dord. He made up a word. That's a great example of what we call text criticism. For all those people who bought that dictionary and may have come across the word Dord, they thought it was a legitimate word and they may have started using it. So let's use some textual analysis and see if we can prove that Dord is a typo. First, we'd have to examine other dictionaries from around that time and from shortly before and after that time to see if the same word shows up. Was the word Dord officially in use, and does it mean density? Secondly, we'd examine the word itself outside of dictionaries. Do scientists ever use the word Dord? Turns out no. So that's pretty good evidence that nobody at the time was using that word in that context. So, since neither of them can be proven true, we would conclude that Dord was not a word and was therefore a typo. But the interesting thing is, nobody noticed this for 10 years. In biblical studies, when we ascribe certain sacred qualities to the scriptures, people may notice things that are out of place or out of whack or just seem to not fit, but they dare not question them because these are, after all, the sacred scriptures. So you can see how things that may have been added or edited or even miscopied over the years could have been treated as good and right and true, even though they may have not been original to the text. They may have been some copy editor's mistake or even their own little commentary written in the margins. Now, I just thought that was a fun example. I hope you did too. Thanks for playing along.